All right, final section of chapter 6. We are evaluating expressions with exponents. So we're going to use all of the exponent rules that we have learned, and we're going to apply them to examples where we're given values for the variables, and we have to substitute those into these expressions. So for all of these examples, we are going to use the same numbers for each variable. So it's nice that it's not going to change every single problem. So for every variable A, we're going to substitute in the value of 2. For every variable B, we'll substitute -1. For every variable C, we'll substitute 3. And for every variable D, we will substitute -4. All right, let's go ahead and get going. First, example A. We only have the variables A and B. So, based on what was given earlier, I know that A is 2 and B is -1. So I'll substitute those values in, and because they're written right next to each other, we're implying multiplication. So I'll take 2 times -1, and that will give me -2. For B, very similar, except now A is going to be squared. So I'm still going to substitute my values in, except now, instead of just writing 2 times -1, it's 2 squared times -1, because I'm squaring A in the original expression. So before I multiply 2 and -1, I first need to address this exponent here. So we'll take 2 to the power of 2. That gets me 4. And now I'm taking 4 times -1. And this will get me -4. Okay? All right. Let's keep going. For example, C. Now I see A, B, and D variables. So I need to make sure I know what those values are. So A, we know, is 2. So I'll substitute that in. And we're going to be taking that to the power of 3 in this expression. Then we have the variable B, which is -1, and we're taking that to the power of 2. And then D is in the denominator, and that is -4. There's no exponent applied to D, so we don't need to worry about that one. Okay, we have our values substituted. Now we just need to simplify. So, one at a time, 2 to the power of 3 is 8. -1 to the power of 2, so this is taking -1 times -1. That's going to give us +1 because that's a negative times a negative. So this becomes 8 times 1 in the numerator, and then our denominator is still -4. So our numerator would just simplify to 8, so then we have 8 divided by -4, which is -2. All right, not too bad so far. Go ahead, try example D on your own. Tell me what you get. Okay, this one's a bit of a doozy. First thing you'll want to do is substitute all of your values in. So we have A, B, C, D. So we're using all of them. So A, B, C, D would be 2, -1, 3, and 4. Oh goodness, what just happened? Let me fix that really quick. Okay. Oh, what's happening? All right, sorry about that. So with all of that being said, we're taking all of those numbers and multiplying them together. So 2 times -1 times 3 times -4. If you remember back to our order of operations, when we're multiplying a bunch of things together, we can just go left to right. So that's what I did here. I'll do some highlighting to help emphasize. So I did 2 times -1, and I got -2. Then I took -2 times 3, and I got -6. Then I did -6 times -4, and that's how I got my final answer of 24. Okay, so you kind of see how I just chipped away? So I just multiplied the first two things, wrote my answer there, and I brought these two things down. Then I multiplied the next two, put it here, and then I brought this last piece down, then I multiplied this and got that. So that's just a quick little progression on how to do that. Okay, this very next problem is almost identical, except after we write all of our terms out, we have to square each of them before we multiply. So our answer is going to be a little bigger, okay? So I'm going to have you pause again. I want you to try this one by yourself and then unpause to see my answer. Okay, so here's how I did the problem. First, I took all of my values I substituted in for A, B, C, and D, and then I squared each one on its own. So 2 squared got me 4, -1 squared got me 1, 3 squared, 9, -4 squared, 16. Then, once I got here, I followed the same procedure as the last problem. So I took my first 2 terms here and multiplied them and got this. Then I took my next 2 terms here, multiplied them and got this. And then I took these 2 terms, multiplied them, and got 576. All right, so just like the last problem, but more work for us to do. Okay, problem F. We have a fraction bar and some fun stuff, so I got to double check what the values are. So let's see, B was -1, so we have -1 times C is 3. So we have 3 squared, because it is C squared. And then D is -4. All of this is divided by A, which I believe is 2. Okay, because I have a term with an exponent, I have to do that first. Exponents come before multiplying. So everything else will stay the same. I have -1, and then 3 squared becomes 9. Then I still have -4, and this is still divided by 2. Okay, now let's talk about the numerator. So I have -1 times 9. That would get me -9. I would then multiply -9 times -4. That would get me 36. And it'd be positive because I'd have a -9 times a -4. So negative times a negative. And this is all still divided by 2. So our final answer, 36 divided by 2, is 18. All right, we got 3 left. Problem G. This is very similar to the one we just did, except when we're done, we're gonna have to square our entire answer, okay? So let's start our very first step and substitute all of our values in. So we have C, which is 3, and we'll keep them in parentheses. And this is getting multiplied by D, which is -4, but it's squared, because notice we have D squared, so that's what this one is. And then this is divided by A squared, so that's 2 squared. Then this entire thing is going to be raised to the power of 2. So there's a lot of exponents that we need to keep track of. Okay, so now I want to clean up my interior exponents. So this term doesn't have an exponent, or this factor doesn't, but this one does and this one does. So I want to simplify those. So this will become 3 times, and then -4 squared is going to be +16. And then in the denominator, 2 squared is 4. And remember, all of this is still being squared. Okay, next, I'm gonna multiply the numerator together. So 3 times 16, that will get me 48. And that is still divided by 4 in the denominator. And this whole thing is still being raised to the power of 2. 48 divided by 4, inside the parentheses, will get us 12. So now we have 12 squared. You can plug that into your calculator, or if you know it off the top of your head, it is 144. That is our final answer for G. Okay, problem H is almost identical. It's just a little different as far as the letters. So I want you to pause, try this one on your own, and see if you get the same answer as me. All right, so going through this, you might have thought you got the wrong answer if it was really big, but this ends up being a really big number. So your final answer should be, oh goodness, I think it's 11,664. So as you're doing this one, you plug in your values, simplify your exponents, and you should end up getting 108, or negative 108, divided by negative 1. So that makes it a positive 108, but I have to square that big number. So definitely use a calculator for that, and then you'll end up getting this very big number. Okay, one more to go. So I have two separate terms. So I have this term here, and then I have this one here, and we're multiplying them together. But there's simplifying we're going to have to do first, obviously. So let's do this one at a time. So first, let's do the red one. Now, when I look at the red one, I notice I have a b in the numerator and a b in the denominator with exponents. So I can actually simplify this before I plug my numbers in, and that'll make it a little easier. So if I do that, I still have a squared in the numerator, but then in my denominator, I would have b to the 1 and b to the 3, right? Because that exponent turns positive. And then if I combine those, I then get a squared over b to the 4th, okay? And then all of this is still squared. So, actually, after showing that work, I am just going to erase this piece, and then I'm gonna move this up here, and we'll get rid of that. Okay, so that's our new red piece. I just simplified our variables based on exponent rules. Now I'll substitute in the values. So a is 2, so I have 2 squared in the numerator, and then b is negative 1, and that is in the denominator, and that's getting the power of 4 applied to it. All of that is raised to the power of 2. So this won't actually be too bad. So in my numerator, 2 squared is 4. Negative 1 to the power of 4 is just negative 1 times itself 4 times. That'll end up being positive 1. So this ends up simplifying to actually 4 squared, because 4 divided by 1 is just 4. So 4 squared is 16. All right, so our entire red piece up there simplified to 16. Now we just have to take care of the blue piece, and then we will see what our final answer is. So we have parentheses, a squared, so that is just 2 squared, times d, which I cannot remember what d was. D is negative 4. So 2 squared times negative 4, all of that is raised to the second power. 2 squared is just 4, and then that is getting multiplied by negative 4, and that is all still squared. 4 times negative 4, that's a positive times a negative, that's negative 16. Negative 16 squared is going to be, I'm going to use my calculator, that will be 256. All right, so our final answer, you can use your calculator, it is 256 times 16. Once you plug that in, you should get 4,096. All right, and I believe that wraps up Chapter 6 for us.